intentionally did that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how I'm reading it.
I see it
Like in
now.
a dog?
I read it, I was
Australian
looking at
Shepherd
it.
mix.
Okay.
Yeah, about 50 pounds.
And
That's why, like, on Wolf Creek,
My,
that's why
to
they
be
did
full
that
confessional,
that
setback.
was
she
a
was 40 when I got her.
condition that we waived in Wolf
You may
Creek.
have a
Wolf
similar
Creek and then
diet.
For no house, it was specifically called out as a condition, saying that we were gonna waive 150 foot. Justin's reading of this says that it meets the ordinance, and that was my question.
I was trying to look to the history of this, because we joined these two lots. Was it through conditional rezoning that we did that, or?
Oh, I don't remember.
So, because we did something to get these two lots together, where we had to vote on it here, and I don't know if it was, I can't remember what it was. And I think we did that on the basis that this was going to be
Next,
food-based.
mixed use. Just looking at what Chris texted me. Let's see.
Hey, pull mine.
Krista is on her way in right now. Deb will be a little late. So I think once Krista gets here, we'll probably good. Because we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, I guess technically we're good now.
Yeah, we can start.
Rich, am I good to start with 5? Or no, 6? 6. Thank you, Barb. Okay. Krista is walking off. That is on the way.
For the record, I'd like to point out all the men are here on time.
And that was
Yeah, I was-
relevant because.
It's not at all, I just wanted to point it out.
Is, Ian coming tonight?
Oh, that's right, Ian's not here, I apologize.
Ian and Michael cannot make it tonight. Which means, can we pass the minutes? If Ian and Michael aren't here?
Oh, jeez.
I checked the minutes.
Okay. Man.
Oh, that was a joke. I'm like, what?
But
I wasn't there.
Patrick, Brent wasn't here and Patrick wasn't on the board. Nope.
Yeah, no, I've read through them a few times.
Sorry, guys, can't do it. Sorry, we'll just keep bumping the minutes.
And then I won't be here. So you'll need everybody else that's here.
So then I'll definitely need Michael and Ian.
Right. To get those minutes done. Maybe I could.
So are
give
you
a
voting in
vote.
Ferndale or Southfield?
Still Ferndale. My residency hasn't changed, so.
As long as you vote.
Right?
Of course. he does.
Should I vote in both places?
No. Unfortunately not.
Did you say both?
Yeah.
It's not Chicago.
Let's not make voter fractions.
Yeah, let's just not do that.
Hey, how are you? Oh, you beat Krista. She just texted me from the parking lot, I thought. That's all right, we'll get started when you're ready. Are we recording, Rich?
Yeah.
Of course we are.
We are indeed.
Of course we're recording. I'm saying silly things. Hello.
My
How are you?
voting in both comment was a joke.
Yeah, for the recording.
For
Yeah,
the recording.
That's kind of why I was asking.
My gender-based attendance crack and the vice chair's voting, it was a joke.
We will get started just as soon as Deb and Krista get set up.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
We're fine.
No, take a minute. So you guys just made porn, so we're good. Okay, make sure that's off. I'm arranging plant exchanges with people. Alrighty. We will call the City of Ferndale Planning Commission meeting of Wednesday, October 17th, 2018 to order at 6:34 PM. We will begin with a roll call. I'm still going to call you City Clerk, Rich, because it's
That's
just
fine.
like what
That's-
rolls
I'll-
off my tongue.
I'll take it.
We'll begin with the roll call of the commission.
Okay,
Commissioner Azar,
Here.
Brazen,
Here.
Casio, Farr,
Here.
Gurink,
Here.
Martin,
Here.
Rock,
Here.
and Chair Baker.
Here, did you call Williamson?
I'm sorry, I did not. Williamson.
Got it. Commissioners Casio and Williamson let us know in advance that they would be absent. Is there a motion to excuse their absence?
Motion to excuse.
Support.
Thank you. That motion was made by Commissioner Brazen. It was seconded by Councilman Martin. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Thank you. That motion passes. We will move to the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda as presented this evening? A question for our city clerk. I'm looking at Barb. Should we, at this point, note that we can't approve the minutes or just deal with it when we get to number? Should we take it off the agenda or should we just bump it when we get there? Got it. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
I like this. We're gonna let Commissioner Farr have it because it's his last meeting. So that was a motion.
Don't say we never done nothing for you.
That was a motion by Councilman Martin with a second by Vice Chairman Farr. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Thank you. That motion passes. We will move to the approval of the minutes of the meeting of August 15th, 2018. These are minutes that we had to bump forward at our last meeting because we didn't have a quorum of the members who were present at the meeting, and we've run into the same problem today because at that meeting, Commissioner Gurink was absent and Commissioner Rock wasn't on the Planning Commission yet. So we really just need to get Michael and Ian here. We can pass the minutes. But at this point, is there a motion needed, Barb, to bump it to the next agenda?
You could do a motion and then do roll call and just so it's proper.
Okay.
I'll move the table, the approval of the minutes.
Do you want it as a motion to table or a motion to pass that we decline?
Should do a motion to pass.
All right.
Support, or sorry,
Move to pass.
support.
Thank you. That was a motion by Commissioner Farr with a second by Commissioner Martin to pass the minutes of the meeting of August 15th, 2018. Because it's not going to pass, we'll do a roll call vote on this one. Rich, when you're ready.
Commissioner Azar,
Yes.
Brazen,
Yes.
Farr,
Yes.
Gurink,
Abstain.
Martin,
Yes.
Rock,
Abstain.
and Chair Baker.
Yes, that motion does not pass, so that will come back at our next agenda. I need 6. That's what happens when I have a full planning commission. I need 6 to pass my minutes, not 5. All right, thank you. Our next item is call to audience. This is a time for anyone in the audience to address the Planning Commission on anything not on the agenda tonight. We only have one item on the agenda that's related to a site plan on Woodward Heights. And if there are questions or comments from the audience, we'll take them next at that time when we do new business. But if there's anyone here in the audience who wanted to address the Planning Commission on something other than that, you've got 3 minutes. You can address us on anything you'd like. You can come on up and state your name for the record. Nope. Alrighty, we will move on to new business. Our only other item on the agenda, other than the minutes we couldn't pass, is the item related to the site plan at 1201 to 1225 Woodward Heights. We'll begin with an introduction from our city staff. We'll then see if the applicant has any information to present. We'll then see if there are any questions or comments from the audience, and then we'll take questions and comments from the table and deliberate up here.
Sounds good. Good evening. The applicant let me know that he and his team are on their way, so maybe I'll just talk slowly. But essentially, the site at 1201, 1225 Woodward Heights, they're 2 parcels right now. We've seen a discussion item about this project earlier this year, and then a previous project from a different property owner that ended up going away. And so now 1201 Woodward Heights LLC is the new entity that is pursuing development here. So the current development proposal includes 20 multiple family units in one singular building. Staff went through the typical site plan review, had police, fire, and engineering review for technical and any zoning and engineering compliance issues. The site right now is zoned mixed use 2. There is R2 surrounding it to the east and west, some R1 single family to the north, and then to the south across Woodward Heights is zoned M1 limited industrial. So kind of that transition zone we've been talking about quite a bit. As I said, there are 2 parcels on the site. Those would have to be combined as part of the future development proposal. And though the site is zoned mixed use 2, the future land use map did designate the site as urban residential, which does have some ties to mixed use with this proposal and being multiple family. Primarily, the frontage is on Woodward Heights. It is a corner lot, so the applicant provided analysis of the setbacks along Woodward Heights within 600 feet to align with what's the existing building there. The proposed building height for the project is 26 feet in height. The maximum allowable height in the district is 45. As far as circulation goes, that was an important part of the review. So the multiple family residential parking standard is 1.5 spaces per unit plus 1 for every 10 units. That required 32 spaces with which the site plan met. 2 of those spaces are ADA spaces. Bicycle parking is always part of our review, just to encourage multiple or multimodal use or transportation options in the city. The applicant did not display the bike parking on the site plan, but in discussions with them, they plan on providing that, and so that is one of the conditions for your review this evening. From a building design perspective, as I said, it is one singular building for the multiple family units. The total building width is 197 feet. With multiple family dwellings, there's a separate portion of the ordinance that does discuss facade length. There is a caveat that facades shall not exceed 150 feet in overall length in a given plane, inclusive of any architectural features that are attached to the building, connected to the parts of the building. The applicant proposed essentially a structure, one singular structure with a portion, with basically half of the building offset, trying to provide a variety of building materials on each portion to differentiate, but still allow for that single building. I did not include it in this, in my staff report and in the findings when we've reviewed similar projects that did exceed that 150-foot width. If the planning commission were to propose to waive that item, it would need to be in the findings portion. And I have a draft finding that you could include if you did so choose to do that. Color elevations were included in the site plan package. So there's a mixture of some gray vertical metal siding and some brick veneer that's on the lighter end. There is an angled metal roof that we've seen on a few projects recently. And the applicant's architect did describe that they were essentially trying to tie in a mixture of the residential character that's nearby with a little bit of the industrial nature that is to the south on Woodward Heights. The applicant is providing some outdoor patios on the lower level units of the project. The applicant should clarify if there's any upper level patios that wasn't discussed before the meeting. Also included in conditions is if there's any building utility and mechanical equipment, which often happens in these projects, they need to be screened, whether that's on top of the building or to the back, so that should be clarified as well. The lighting plan generally met the exterior lighting ordinance requirements. There's 2 different types of LED lights that are proposed for a total of 8 lights. They're all wall pack lighting. The foot candles generally met the requirements, but the foot candles need to be reduced on that northern edge where there is residential, where we do require 0.1 foot candles on that property line. Waste management is included on the site plan. It's located in the rear yard, includes all the usual features that we require in the ordinance, and screened with masonry and a wood gate. Landscaping was reviewed, of course, as part of the project. Just wanted to clarify, there is a chart that's included in the staff report. The applicant actually is proposing 7 new trees. I think in the staff report it says 6. So the plan is deficient by 12 trees. And then there is some tree removal that's proposed on site. Of the tree removal that's proposed on site, our DPW director and sustainability planner did go out to assess the trees, which is part of the process in the ordinance, the recently updated landscape ordinance. And so under their determination, only 2 of those fall under the protected tree ordinance. So you'll see later in the conditions that the applicant, upon submitting the final site plan and landscape plan, just determining if that is still the case, if those, what trees are being removed and which are not. And just for the planning commission, I don't know that we've talked about it yet, but for demolition plans, the city now does require a tree permit for residential or commercial sites. So that would be included on the site, and then we would either have payment at that time for the tree or upon the time of certificate of occupancy. So any deficiencies as far as removing trees, and if they're not able to meet the landscape requirement on site, that's when that comes into play. So, and happy to talk more about that if there's any questions on that process. Parking lot generally met the requirements, and the architectural screening to the adjacent properties and surrounding the parking lot provided the necessary landscape buffer on Grayson and Goodrich streets. Other than that, I did include, 6 conditions that I've kind of mentioned throughout this. In previous conversations with the applicant, those didn't seem to be an issue to be met. And staff would recommend, if the planning commission is interested in moving forward, then staff could handle those items administratively. There's also a long-term stormwater maintenance requirement that council ends up approving. It's pretty standard process. Projects like Detroit Axle and others that have connected their stormwater system to the cities provide a legal document, and then we have city council approve that. So included that in there, but that's a pretty standard process. So happy to answer any questions you might have. Otherwise, the applicants are here to talk about the plan more.
Great. Let's have the applicants come on up and add anything they'd like.
And I don't know if you want the plan, but
Yeah,
it's right there.
Up there, we'll
Yeah.
just walk through it.
Okay. Okay. Actually, you probably want to zoom in. So if you zoom in, then up here's the zoom for certain parts.
We'll get it figured out.
All right.
We'll get it figured out.
Welcome.
How is everybody?
Good. How are you?
Oh, hold on, we're doing an update.
We don't register our Adobe?
Uh-oh,
I think we all just went through an update.
Oh, okay.
perfect. I was gonna ask the city for their credit card number. So,
I don't know if Justin has it.
he probably doesn't.
Probably not.
No, so you guys may or may not remember me before from 1741 Livernois, and I did a little discussion topic on this project before. We've since changed a little bit of gears, gone the route of apartments, which we think would be a good fit for the neighborhood. Go along with adding more housing too, 20 units instead of 16. It's better for the area. Just all in general, I think it fits with everything that's going on in that whole urban rest district there with the brewery, Drifter Coffee coming, farm field table, all the other stuff that's going on. So I'll kind of breeze through this. I mean, you guys, I don't know, did you actually go through the presentation before or not really?
Just through the staff report.
Okay. So I mean, if there's anything in particular you guys would like to see or talk about, we tried to keep some elements similar to, here we go, similar to Livernois. Some of the angled roofs, obviously, not as extreme, not as jaw-dropping, as I'll say, as the other ones were, but I think it goes with the neighborhood. It fits with the industrial building and the residential behind it, and it's not so much going on as the other project was. But again, this is similar materials, metal panels, tan style brick, some black metal panels, black windows, probably a vinyl or aluminum clad window, some flat roof areas, membrane roof, and a lot of light, the front, again, a lot of glass on the front of the building, some small porches, just trying to kind of embrace the street. Woodward Heights obviously is another cool little corridor through Ferndale, such as Livernois. And so doing the same, kind of the same thing as we did before. That's really it. Yeah, that's kind of our money shot there, so. There it is.
Thank you. I want to see if there's anyone in the audience who had questions or comments on this before we kind of deliberate up here at the table. Any? Okay. Just want to make sure we give people a chance. All right. I've got a whole list. Who wants to start?
For it.
You want me to start?
Yes, please.
Yeah? All right. All right, talk to me about why the north elevation looks so much cooler than the south elevation.
So,
First question.
well, the north elevation is
Why
the
does the
entrance.
back side look so much better than the front side?
Well, it's the entrance.
And that
yeah.
gets to my next
Brian
question.
can do some talking too. I didn't introduce Brian, by the way. Brian Howard.
Brian.
Howard,
Thanks,
HF
Mike.
Architecture.
So-
I'm the architect for the project. Well, the rationale behind that is the fact that the entrance occurs on the north side of the building, not on the south side of the building. What we really tried to do was to create the essence of two buildings, albeit that it's one building. The offset is 8 feet on the south elevation. Now, there has been discussion, we have talked about potentially introducing some sort of a horizontal canopy of some sort on the south elevation over some of the recessed bays that occur to try and break up more of that facade.
Okay.
You know, we're not gonna provide an entrance on the south side, it just doesn't make any sense. But we can take and start to introduce some of the elements that you see on the north side on the south side. As a matter of fact, I've even studied that a little bit just within the past week in terms of trying to do that. When we got Justin's report, and he made a comment of that.
Oh, he did?
He did. Well, not the sense of the north being so much better than the south.
It wasn't
than
so
the-
blunt as mine?
But he did state that it would be nice to have some more, maybe some elements on that other side. So we are taking that into account, and we will look at that, to introduce some of that, because we agree that.
Yeah, and part of, I don't mean to jump in front of Brian, but no, something that we've talked about and is kind of synonymous with 1741 Livernois is the cedar fronts, and kind of the styling that ended up happening. We still want to incorporate some of that into this, just not sure where exactly, not sure how budget's gonna, impact it. So we're still trying to figure that piece out, but definitely going to have something of that sort integrated in here. We just don't want to give it all away up front. So.
Okay. My next question actually relates to, and I'm trying to find it in the ordinance, because it may only be relevant downtown, but I'm not sure, and I'm actually kind of looking to Krista and Deb for some of your historical memory on this too. It is unusual for us to evaluate a building that doesn't have any entrances that address its street frontage. Is that, I know it's required downtown. I'm looking sort of through the ordinance now, or Justin, I don't know if you can answer this, but it's unusual enough that the more, going up and down Woodward Heights, and of course, they're townhomes next to you, a little different than the apartments, in terms of entrances and circulation, but can we have a building that doesn't have an entrance that actually addresses its address?
So, and I just want to point something out though.
Uh-huh.
On the south elevation, how do I explain this? Those are entrances. Let me just-
Well, yeah, those
Oh,
sliding
the-
doors really are
The
entrances.
patios?
Yeah,
these are
those are the
entrances.
entrances,
So this would
those
be
are
your private
doors
entrance.
into each unit.
So similar to Livernois,
Yes.
the patio and the,
Yeah,
so
the-
it is,
the
it's
patio
not,
is recessed into it, so it's partly covered, partly outside of it. But that sliding door can be somebody's entrances. If they're coming from Urban Rest Brewery, for instance, and they don't wanna
Right.
go
Right.
all the way
That's
around the whole
exactly
building,
my
they can
question.
come in that door.
Yep, exact same
exactly
thing
my
as
question.
the way we addressed it at Livernois. The difference is your common space was entrance off of the front of Livernois versus the back, because we had garages. So
Okay.
this makes more sense, similar to
Well, that
not similar to
helps.
anything, but your entrance way off the back of your parking lot, so.
It helps, but it brings up, if I may, another question, tangential to that. So will you put addresses, numbers on the outside of the south side then, next to the sliding glass doors?
That's probably.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I would
really?
think
For
so.
unit
Make the
numbers?
most sense.
I would think so, because, I mean, you can't park on Woodward
Right.
Heights.
Correct.
But you can certainly, if you're walking, you can enter it. So I think it technically is their second front door.
Okay.
Their front door really is off of a corridor on the
Right.
inside of the building. So
Correct.
it's really more like a hotel.
Correct.
So
Right.
these entrances could be, I'm almost guessing they may use the sliding doors more so than they even come in if they're not parking in the backside and then entering into their house.
Okay, thank you.
But if you live on the second floor and you've gone across
There
the
is no
street.
second floor.
Oh,
These are all
so,
two-story units, all
Two-story
entered
structures.
only from the first floor.
got it, thanks.
Through the chair. There's no sidewalk connecting these patios to the, or walkway connecting the patios. You're gonna have people walking through the grass and stuff there? Is that
It's
the
gonna be
idea?
similar layout, that's not really shown on the civil, but same as Livernois, we have patios that walk right up to the sidewalk. So they're right against the sidewalk there. May not show it that well in this site
I
plan,
mean,
but
to be honest with you, I can't remember, can you go to the landscape plan?
Yeah.
Can we find the landscape plan?
I'm just noting it as
Because
a
I'm just
potential
trying to see
condition.
how they designed the landscaping to see if they closed off those patios from the sidewalk. If they closed
Oh,
off
maybe
the
it did,
patios
yeah.
from the sidewalk, then you're correct. They wouldn't
Yeah, I
be
guess
able
it did.
to.
And that was my question. It looked like there was a line across the front of the patio, and then there's landscaping going in front. So I was surprised when you said the intent was to be able to walk out
Well, I,
from your patio
You know,
to the,
personally, it's probably my fault for not telling them. We shouldn't have probably provided that much landscape. The idea was not to close those patios off.
that's
You
great.
know, completely.
Let's not do that.
We didn't really want to do that, and
Yeah.
they kind of did that on their own, I believe. So, in my opinion, I would prefer to see less landscaping at the patios and have more like stepping stones up from the sidewalk up to the patios.
am I allowed to ask someone from the audience to say something, if they're willing?
Sure.
So didn't we just go through, I don't mean to put you guys on the spot, but I'm gonna put you on the spot. So Cindy and Leslie from 1741 Livernois, unit number 7.
Oh, you're my neighbors. I live on Bowfield. Hi.
So,
Nice to meet you.
we just went through a big round of, I don't even know if you call it discussion, regarding privacy at the entryways. And this is a big point of contention actually with the residents, that there's not enough privacy at those front patios. So this is one of those arguments that could go either way. But what I'm gonna at least lean towards, unless there's an ordinance directing us differently, to what the residents want and the marketing wants, because that's the only way we're gonna have people living in these units is if they're comfortable living in them. And that's something we're actually going through at Livernois right now, that some folks aren't comfortable with that frontage. So I don't know if there's an ordinance requiring that entrance, and maybe I'm speaking too far with it, but
what I'm
just
looking
kind of
for.
playing on reality, what's happened in real world.
I mean, you're welcome to weigh in if you'd like. I just need you to do it at the microphone so I can get you on.
Sorry to throw you on the spot, you don't have to say anything if you don't want to.
If you'd state your name and address for the record, I just need to make sure you're on the mic.
Leslie Norland Thompson, 1711 Livernois,
that's
Unit
right.
7.
I knew you.
Yeah, you do know me.
I do know
I used
you.
to run affirmation.
Yeah,
We're Facebook friends. How are you?
Yeah, so I think, a narrow area for people to walk through, like you were saying, a stepping stone or a patio stone to kind of mark that, but then landscaping to both sides of that.
Sure.
Because what we're having, we live on the second floor, so unless, a 20-foot tall person comes along, we're okay. But there are a lot of people that are walking down the sidewalk, literally going right up onto the people's patios and going like this. Just
Oh,
like,
no.
Wow, this is really cool.
oh,
So that was why we were
That's
trying
tough.
to come up with a different barrier.
And that happened to be going on about the time we were working on the landscape
Yeah,
plan,
so I think,
I mean, that
grass,
was-
something that's gonna be, outside of a 2-foot space to get up to the door, so that it does feel, maybe the people walking down the sidewalk are not gonna be quite as apt to, walk up there.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is I want to encourage people to feel like they have a front door that leads to something other than their car, right? So you have places to go across the street. You have, businesses and restaurants around the corner. So if we're going to see some of that commercial strip, come back along along Hilton or continue to develop, and not have to rely on cars along Woodward Heights. I want people to feel like they can walk out a front door.
I know that our one neighbors, in our building, they go out their front door all the time.
Sure.
They sit out there all the time, they're out there all the time, they use that door wall as an entrance quite frequently. They're the only ones, well, no, I guess Carolyn does too. So there's two in our building. I don't really know the people in the other buildings' activities as well, so.
Thank you, that's helpful. Thanks, Leslie. Any other thoughts or comments on doors, addresses, sidewalks, walkways addressing Woodward Heights? It's, like I said, it's unusual for me to not see something address the street, which is why I question whether or not it's required in a non-CBD setting.
I can clarify that a little
If you can clarify that.
Yeah.
Not necessarily about the doors and walkways, but I think, I'm sorry, the facade and the need to do something more there.
I want
So
to make sure
totally
we come
support.
back to
Yeah,
that
okay,
too.
thanks.
Yeah, but let's get an answer on the address.
So, it's not required specifically there. There's a condition B or C, I think, in the mixed-use requirements that talks about, no parking in the front yard, shall be only used for landscaping and things like that. But it is something that we're including in the mixed-use zoning district update. Yeah, so there will be two just similar to downtown, there will be these, like, kind of a stoop frontage and a storefront frontage, so that it encourages more of that activation, so. Not required now, but definitely something that I think you've all given feedback before, that should be part of the new ordinance, so.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on front doors in connection to Woodward Heights? We'll come back to facade.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I made a note that we might want to consider that as a condition, that there be, the patios will somehow connect to the sidewalk at Woodward Heights, since that's definitely not shown right now on the plans. Thank you, Josh, for grabbing that. All right, let's come back to the facade. Talk to us some more about the south side. The north side, I am certainly not an architect, and I usually look over to Michael when I have these conversations, when we'll look at Deb and Kristen and stuff. To me, the north side just looks much more active and interesting than the south side. Any thoughts on how, without completely rotating a building, which that seems like a bit much of us to ask.
Yeah, we're not gonna rotate the building, but here's an idea
Wasn't suggesting that you
that I just came up with, which was, because that is a very interesting element that breaks that facade up.
Yeah.
Right? So we have the ability right here at this to develop this corner right here to look more like this. And what I mean by that is step this part back, so the line would occur here, and then this could be a canopy or a flat roof that comes out, because that could be pushed back to then look more like that in that particular unit at that corner. That would allow for it to step back the 8 feet, and not just 8 feet going this way, but then it would be 8 feet this way, and then that would be set further back, which would allow this roof to kind of come and extend over that, to envelop that corner. And that's very easily done, and that doesn't really affect that unit very much at all on that second floor, because if you notice on the plan, this building here, from here over, are all two-story units. These are all tall units at this facade, and then it's a loft that looks over into that space. So it doesn't affect that unit whatsoever.
And another thing I'm noticing right here, it's kind of an easy topic, is these punch-outs around the entryways. Whew, this is a touchscreen, that would have been nice to know. These little black punch-outs around the entryways, I would see those probably being more of a cedar. Again, to go with the Livernois facade, same here, if you go further down to the brick, kind of where the mouse is right now, this being a cedar piece.
Through the chair, I think the cedar would help a lot. Part of what makes Livernois works is it's such an interesting and attractive building.
Right.
And the front of this looks great.
That's why people want to look in.
Yeah, well, that's why people want
I
to
was
look through
just
the
gonna say,
windows,
people also
sorry,
love-
yeah.
Yeah, people also love knocking on their windows.
I don't validate that behavior in any manner. But what really, the impact to the character of that community and matching up with what's going there is that south-facing, side. So I like both those ideas with the cedar and with what you're talking about with
Yeah.
Through the chair,
slanting.
I'm not opposed to the north side being exciting. I think that's nice because
Yeah.
it's facing the residential.
Residential.
Yeah.
On the south elevation, though, on the east half of the south elevation, you will have a lot of sun coming in, and I don't know what your intention is for those second-story windows, but, adding some kind of a detail there might also help as well.
But also remember that where you see those sliding doors, where you
Micro-
see the darker, are
Microphone. Sorry, thank you.
where you see those recesses on that part there are recessed back into the building.
Yeah,
So
I'm
the
talking about the
recess-
other windows.
Yeah, those,
We don't have a
It's-
second floor plan, so I'm not sure what's going on up there, but
yeah,
it's a lot of sun.
yeah, those particular windows in those, we might have remote blinds on them.
That's what a lot of people ended up doing at Livernois, similar to, same issue, a lot of glass, and
East facing.
kind of ended up becoming something each resident handled differently.
But doing something as you had just previously described, changing that center section of the south facade to give it a little bit more excitement, changing the material, I think would add to the variety and interest on that side.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on the facade, on building articulation? Anything on building length?
Through the chair, I'm very disappointed in the design. I think that the neighborhood's got a lot of character to it, and there's a really great example, very traditional. Doesn't have to be traditional, but a great example in the next block over of multifamily, but it feels like could be a home. So I can appreciate that it's adjacent to an industrial district, and I know there's even some light industrial on that side of the street, not adjacent to this. I also know it's very close to Woodward, Hilton, which is, carrying that commercial industrial up and down it, but I don't know that I really value this design. I can appreciate that you're offering a lot of material examples and could do this, could do that, but I think I've seen what's happening on 9 Mile, and to me, that's a huge lesson of when you don't get the scale right and the proportions right and make it interesting right up front, what does a big box sitting there mean to the community? So think there's a lot that this could go really far to be better. And the way it's now, I really would have a hard time supporting it. I don't know if it's too many units and it doesn't give you enough leeway to break it up a little more, or if it's just your first design pass and it might need some more massaging. I see that you're open to doing that, but I don't see how this complements the neighborhood. And, I did look through, what are we asking for to make it harmonious with the neighborhood? Just, right out of our zoning ordinance, what would it take? And I think it takes a little more work than what I'm seeing here.
Yeah, I'll let you say if you'd like. We're more or less reacting actually to the, I don't know if you remember me coming in front of you guys for a discussion topic for 16 condo units, identical to what's on Livernois. We're actually, this is a reaction to the fact that we can't build that because an ordinance was overlooked on the past project. And in us discussing a future ordinance that's being rewritten, the possibility of us getting approval based on that possible future ordinance, we're not being allowed that either. So I'm kind of stuck in between a rock and a hard place, also with a neighbor who has no roof on his house, another neighbor who has a campsite in his front yard, another neighbor who has a car lot in his backyard. So we're kind of fighting those elements in the neighborhood, and that's got somewhat to do with the design, that if we really go above and beyond and overboard, is that really going to be just a loss of a project? So if you have looked at actually currently what's there right now, it's a vacant gray building, a green space lot with overgrown bushes, none of which are actually protected trees. And this is our addition to the neighborhood that I think adds a ton of excitement to that neighborhood, especially with all of the new retail spaces, Urban Rest, the butcher shop, there's a cheese factory in there, a shop, Drifter Coffee, all the things coming in the neighborhood. I think it blends just fine with the neighborhood, but that's just my opinion right now.
Through the chair, I do appreciate that it's ripe for having some housing there and life, and the people will energize it. So I'm very excited that you're looking at the property I just have to imagine that this building sitting there, does that make it better?
I think it does.
Well, we obviously think it looks 100 times better than
Yeah.
what's currently there.
Yeah.
And even what's currently better than what's across the street from it as well. You know, there's been money put into that area. But there needs more money put into that area. We clearly see that, and Mike sees that. What we really are reacting to is a street that has industrial buildings across the street from it. We've matched the brick that occurs on the buildings across the street from it. We've, in our opinion, we've really went above and beyond to really create a building that, in our opinion, it's two buildings. It could have been built at two different times. That's the beauty of what we feel our design is. It's a design that looks like we could have had one block building built in 1920 and another building built in 1950. And you may not agree with us, but we really think we did something that's really gonna benefit this street and also benefit, other buildings that are gonna meet or exceed the design of what occurs on that street.
Thank you. If anyone else?
That's currently what we have there, so I do think
Yeah.
it is better than that.
One of the differences, and, you know, I'm disappointed, not in you, in us, and I call it our tenement issue, because it was the best comment made in 2018 at the Planning Commission, in my opinion, was when Katie Hirschberger made that tenement comment. But us, you know, sort of not figuring out that spacing issue that you referenced, it's part of a much bigger conversation, and we had actually a lot of resident input on it, because it would impact a number of places all the way across the city. But one of the big differences that I see on this building compared to what I see in my neighborhood on Livernois and what I saw in the initial plan is that definition between the first and second story, right? It's not just flat. And they're a different type of unit. You know, you have an upstairs and a downstairs tenant and an upstairs and a downstairs balcony on Livernois. This just, it just feels, it's just so
I also paid
flat. I
big
don't know
money
how
for
else to
big dollar
describe it.
renderings for the last presentation you guys looked at, and that's what everyone's eyes attract to, and they pop and they 3D, and that doesn't meet ordinance or
Oh,
not,
no.
it's just a pretty picture.
I mean, sort of the, you know, I don't have the right word, but breaking up between the stories or
Well, it's just,
something else.
and again, it could be the rendering, it could be, so, I mean, I appreciate you taking our comments, it's just, there's nothing that pops about it, it just feels pedestrian compared to, but of course it looks better than Pete's Place, anything would look better than Pete's Place right now. You know, but
Yeah, we don't
it's-
argue that point.
Yeah, you know, but we have a responsibility looking with an eye to the future too, not what's just
Right.
there, because, you know, so.
Of course. Well, we would kind of like to be a part of the future. This is something I'm going to own for the rest of my life here, so.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Through the chair. I'm trying to think of the history, and I talked to Kate a little bit about this, and when these two parcels were originally joined, the idea was this wasn't going to be housing of any sort. The idea was this was going to be a restaurant, it was going to add that element to and that was the basis for us putting these two parcels together. The basis, if I recollect, it had nothing to do with having a large flat wall along Woodward Heights is what I see. And the only thing that's keeping it from failing the ordinance on that, as Kate and I looked at, is an 8-foot setback, because you got 200 feet of flat wall. I think it's very strange that there isn't an entrance to the building on that side of the property. You want people to come in and out, and access the south, this new burgeoning area, and you don't have a commonplace entrance. The reality of these outdoor patios is that's what they are. It's not a front door, it's an outdoor patio. I mean, maybe they'll be used as a front door, or maybe they'll be used as a patio, completely secluded off to whatever the apartment user wants to do with it. So it doesn't seem like it's lending itself to the street in an idea where maybe someone uses it as a front door, it will do that. you are going into an area that's different but attacking the neighbors and how they're using their property, whether they're using it as a campsite or maybe they have difficulty with the roof at the point, doesn't help this property be any better. I think it needs to have a lot of, I mean, you look at what's going into that area south, and there's a lot of different ideas and a lot of different texture to it. And I think that's the whole thing there's no texture. It's just very flat up and flat across. The north, we're all praising that. I don't know how you do it on the south elevation, but it seems like you guys got a lot of talent and you do a lot of great projects, and it just needs to be applied to that south side. I don't know what's holding that back necessarily. So I do like the project. I do like what you're gonna put there, but it just doesn't seem to engage. Like, if I drove by that, I would think I was in the backside of a building.
Turns its back on Woodward Heights, yeah.
Right, if you're coming by and I want to get information, I'm not able to access the building on that side. If I want to, I don't know what your plans for inside there are. If it's an apartment, you might have security or you might have information about you guys. I have to walk around and go through a parking lot to get to it. So that it doesn't embrace the community like I think it should. So that's my position on it.
Thank you. We can take either other comments on this topic, or we can start a new one about addressing the street, about facade and design. My next questions are pretty small, and they're about landscaping. So I can just kind of jump to those, and we can come back. Okay. Just want to make sure we get all of this out. Sorry, one sec. I have a question on the landscaping plan about cobblestones. When you say cobblestones, do you mean the sort of river rock sized stuff that we sort of typically see around downtown and that I think is over near Livernois, or do you mean like rocks the size of a baseball that someone's gonna put through a window?
No, this is the same stuff that's at Livernois, so it's a small river rock. I don't know if cobblestone's the right word, but
No, that's fine, and that's what I was going to ask you to change it to, if it was cobblestone.
baseball-sized rocks are frowned upon.
Just for security issues, no, really, truly.
No, that makes perfect sense, because,
Yeah, it's important, just for safety and security and to not have an attractive nuisance of like a softball.
something that kids want to pick up and throw at the cars going down Woodward Heights, that, yeah.
I remember a conversation with Foley Mansfield, and they didn't believe us that, like,
really?
really, we can't have cobblestone-sized rocks in downtown.
Good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah. That might be the definition of attractive nuisance. Other questions or comments, conversation from the commission about whether we feel we're ready to vote on this tonight, if we feel that there are conditions that we can put on the table that might satisfy our concerns, or if we need to see this again.
Just a couple, what are probably really easy curiosity questions, if I may. Why only 4 bike spaces? That seems like a really small amount.
I think that's
I
all
don't
that's
think that-
required, technically, right?
But for 20 units, 4 spaces, just my feedback would be that feels
Right.
low.
Yeah, I mean,
Don't tell Melanie I said that, but I would, I'd
she'd be
prefer to see
pleased.
more. She'd be proud of me. And then, can you talk a little bit about, these are all market rate apartments then, I take it, you're going for?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's nothing in the affordable housing realm that you're targeting at this point?
no.
And you mentioned that this was fitting more in line with the character of the neighborhood. What's the percentage of rentals, do we know, in that neighborhood? It'd be
I
good
know
to
a lot
know
of
for
the-
discussion.
Just from talking with the neighbors, I know a lot of those condo units to the west are rented out, and now I know they're owned, but then they're rented out by, the
Yeah.
owners. So I don't know if that's like a true, how you would determine that in that neighborhood. I just know that I was talking with a lot of people over there,
Sure.
trying to pick everyone's brain, so
Yeah, okay,
found out a lot of those are rented.
thanks.
Should I start calling on people? Commissioner Gray?
Through the chair, yeah, I guess I'm going back, but it has to do with the facade length and how the city is looking at a a given plane. I guess my reading of it was when you're facing it from one direction, inclusive of any architectural, aspects of it, anything that's connecting the building, that it's within that horizontal or that plane of which that you're facing. Is this the 8-foot kind of step back? I guess I was kind of looking for a little bit more information about how that's been interpreted.
Yeah, in the
I had a
past,
similar
that's-
question, and Josh had a different interpretation than me, so let's see
Sure.
what Justin says.
Yeah, in the past, it's been interpreted, the 8-foot setback was the interpretation for this. For previous projects, it's been indents that were a little bit deeper, I would say, probably on 409, and Ferndale House. I wasn't really around for the start of that one, but I think it was some of the insets that were there for that. But at least, based on interpretation from 409, we were using the 8-foot setback as the separation of the plane there.
So on things like Ferndale House and Wolf River, my recollection is that it was a condition of site plan approval that we waived that
Waived it.
150-foot.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it should be in findings, really, but yes,
So this is something that would need to be waived.
That was part of my question, was whether or not the commission felt that way.
in the past, I guess I should clarify. And looking at the minutes from 409, it wasn't formally waived. I think it was implied.
Oh.
But that's just from what I saw today.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you for looking at that.
Because, for me on this, I'm going to probably echo a lot of the concerns from Commissioner Azar is that, or even some from the other commissioners here, it is somewhat uninteresting. It is somewhat a little bit monolithic on that frontage. And I think that was part of the intention of not having a facade that is exceeding 150 feet. I do appreciate that it is trying to deal with that in somewhat with that 8-foot step back. I think we've kind of alluded to the fact that the north side of the building has a little bit more differentiation kind of built into it. And so it feels to me that we're struggling with something that is in the ordinance and is intended to kind of prevent that sort of a problem from occurring. So for me, thinking about waiving that, it kind of feels like a self-imposed problem that could be dealt with other changes, whether it's a different unit count or some other aspect of the building design. So that's something that's giving me a little bit of pause as well. Then I think that also lends itself into the pretty deficient amount of trees for landscaping and some of the other needs.
We could fit the trees, they would just die, so I mean, that's.
Yeah, well, I mean, even the trees that are kind of included are crabapple trees that are on the smaller side as well, which, yeah, I mean, they gotta kind of fit in the spaces that they are in, but those spaces are small because of the size of the building, and the size of the building is once again kind of that challenge of how much of that space is being taken up in that one plane, how much of that space is being taken up of the entire site as well. So it feels like some of those aspects are kind of butting right into coming across the ordinance.
My question to Justin, when we talked yesterday, was also about that 150-foot. Because I had a similar opinion to Brent, as I was looking straight on at the building, and then asked Josh about it, and we sat down tonight, and he said, he sort of looked at the top-down site plan and looked at that 8-foot step back. So I then understood a little bit more where Justin was coming from, but are there other comments and thoughts on that long facade, whether or not, I think an argument could be made either way about whether or not this meets the intent of the ordinance. My initial reaction was that it did not. I see the position about the 8-foot adjustment. But it kind of comes back to the way that it's designed. It's not addressing the street, and that's just really strange for me to see a building that's not addressing the street.
And through the chair, if I will just read, section 24-151, the multiple family dwellings, the one that's referenced in our packet, says that multiple family dwelling facade shall not exceed 150 feet in overall length in a given plane, inclusive of any architectural features that are attached to the building or connect the parts of the building together. So that, to me, is pretty inclusive of all things within a given plane. I guess that was kind of how I'd seen it. And I think that's something that's could be criticized on some of the other, I guess, sites that have been talked about as well.
Yeah. Other comments and questions from the table?
Yep.
Commissioner Rock?
One question and maybe a comment. Are all the bedrooms planned on the second floor?
Yes.
That's the intent? Then my comment, I guess, is being flavored by the dozens of surveys that I have read through recently from elderly residents that maybe we're not accommodating them with what we're building in Ferndale, even though they want to stay here. So it's a little bit difficult to see, 20 new units with stairs in every unit, bedrooms on the second floor, which I could see an elderly resident wanting a one-bedroom, 800-square-foot unit, but not being able to move in because the bedrooms are on the second floor. So that's my comment.
Yeah, so there's two types of units.
Yep.
We've got units to the east, units to the west. So your units to the west, two-bedroom, 1,000-square-footers. Is that the one I'm thinking of that has a studio or a downstairs? Or is
The
it
ones on the
ones?
east have a study or a den on the first floor, which can technically be
It's kind of a
classified
flex unit essentially, so.
as a bedroom, although we're not calling it a bedroom, because currently you don't have a closet in that particular room. Certainly can add a closet into it, but,
Is the bathroom on the first floor? On the
There's
main level?
bathrooms on first floor and
Yes.
second floor, yes. Full bathrooms on both.
The surveys that Commissioner Rock is referring to, through one of those wonderful sort of like Ferndale neighbor connections, I found out that all of our seniors over the age of 60, based on our voter registry records, had received a survey from the city asking about a number of different things, including housing preferences, which was something we've been talking about a lot here, is how are we planning for the future? What do people need? If people need to downsize and they want to stay in Ferndale, what do they need and what are we building? And when I realized we had the opportunity to get actually a huge sample size, like of 1,500 people, 500 returned the survey. It's huge sample size, right? I said, well, the planning commission will help you enter the data if we can use the data too. So Commissioners Azar, Brazen, Rock, and I have actually been entering dozens
So you're
and
seeing all
dozens of surveys.
the answers right out.
So it's kind of
firsthand,
top of
right?
mind, that we have, as we look at buildings that are, this is the biggest building boom that the city's gone through since the 50s, right? So if we're planning on things that are going to serve our residents for the next 10, 20, 30 years, what are their needs looking forward? And at least, as I interpret it, I think that's kind of where part of your question's coming from.
Yep,
Is-
correct.
is
I
this
mean, I
the
got
floor
the sense
plan?
that, I'm not going to, I'll speak for the surveys which I saw, but I got the sense that people wanted to stay in Ferndale, maybe didn't have the opportunity to move into an apartment, but maybe wanted something like that.
I think,
I came away thinking, man, I should be building some elderly units. So,
We've thought about that.
yeah, well, I mean, I don't know.
Have the data soon.
If you do go through some kind of redesign, access from the front, maybe it'd be nice to consider some single-level units.
Thank you.
Or main floor bedroom.
Yes.
That's sort of the other thing you.
Correct.
Is there any, this is just a question, because I got all you guys in here, like, is there any ordinances or rules on I don't know if the word is nursing home, but age in place, or, I know there's ordinance up and down Hilton that they will not allow it at all, not allowed at all. So, that's why I'm asking, what would make a site allowed to have a nursing home type unit. I mean, we'd be
Yeah.
very interested in something like that in this neighborhood, but
We had a
Right, right now
I've been
it's
shot
a
down
type.
on anything I've ever brought up on that.
Yeah, right now it's a housing unit type that's addressed in the zoning ordinance. I mean, I think there's ways to, as we just talked about, build other housing units that could serve a donsizing, but an assisted living or a nursing home is a specifically called
Yeah.
out type.
I don't think I've shut you down, but.
No.
Okay, good. So, because assisted living is special land use in mixed use, so Hilton, Livernois, this site, that could all, assisted living is just a special land use, so that's just the additional, council review.
There is one on Hilton.
As far as like age in place, I mean, that's not really defined in our ordinance, so if it meets the single family attached, 3 or more, or if it meets multiple family dwelling, that type of, definition, then it would be permitted here, so, yeah.
One of the things, just, I can only speak for myself, one of the things I really liked about the project that you did on Livernois, that I've just encouraged, we had another developer who was interested in doing a small infill, maybe a few units. I said, could you think about perhaps stacking? So you've at least got some barrier-free access on a first floor unit, even if, maybe it's a young, cool family that's there now in 10 years.
Right.
Like, their mom might need to move in, or, what's the use that's going to age with the city a little bit? And I don't know that we need or would want an ordinance that is that prescriptive.
Right.
But I think, we would be looking to developers, and we'd try to provide as much data as we could to help you make good decisions about the types of products that people are asking for, which is why I was excited about the senior survey when I found out it existed.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Is that gonna be public data, the information?
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Yep, it's part of a state of Michigan certification program.
Very cool.
Getting back to this, sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a tirade. I was gonna thank you guys for that later, but thank you for it now.
No, it was very interesting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are there any other specific comments or questions
I think,
on this site?
not comment, or, well, I guess it's a comment. I guess from what I've heard, and I'm willing to be very wrong, I don't like to ask people to come back, but I think at this point, we would be, I think, best served with the concerns that we've got, because we like this project, we like the work you've done, we want to be as supportive as possible, but maybe ask you to come back with the integration of some of our ideas as soon as possible.
That was actually then my next question,
Oh, sorry.
was, did people feel that this could pass tonight, or that we needed to be sort of specific in some requests or prescriptions for the applicant about what would pass?
Through the chair, I probably won't be here for it, but I think the plane, the definition of what we're considering a plane and an architectural feature, I would need to have an understanding of how we were going to treat that, because I get your position, and I agree with, it's all one plane. Each elevation is a plane, so to speak, and an 8-foot setback to me is more of an architectural feature than it is a change of a plane. I mean, because when you're looking at it, that's what you're seeing. So are we going to require, or what is required to break up a building, basically? Do you have to have a complete gap, a complete separations of building? I know we've treated it kind of differently along the way here, and we've definitely passed some things that, when thinking about it now, maybe wouldn't pass if we had a requirement that it was a separation of buildings. So that would be something that I think should be defined before, for the developer, I mean, to understand what you're gonna require, so.
Or
think-
what treatment would allow us to feel that it's enough of a difference?
Yeah,
And that's-
and that's my question really, is because of what, I mean, my review is based on what's been done before, and I know
Right.
that the courtyard areas, I guess, of 409 probably were a little bit deeper than this, also
Yeah.
deeper site probably.
Dog park in
Um,
front and the retail at the ends, I mean,
yeah.
it was really different.
Yeah, which I get, but I think I treated it as this 8-foot setback would separate the plane. And so if that's not what this commission is thinking, I'm not, I mean, I'm sure the architect can think of some other, options, but I think that's just different than I think what's been operated on in the past. So I kind of feel bad in that, there was a previous drawing that didn't meet ordinance, and this one, direction was given to the applicant that it did. And
I
that's,
understand. And, yeah, and I don't want anyone to leave without clear
Right.
direction.
So,
I
so
think-
maybe we can talk about that. And I just also wanted to just talk about some of the other comments addressed and not that they're not valid, but, as far as a front entry on Woodward Heights, you know, I think we all agree that should be in the ordinance going forward, but it's not something we can necessarily require for this. But I think, I mean, that's in the new ordinance that's coming for sure.
In the world do we not have buildings crossing the street?
I mean, if this were
can't.
9 Mile, we could definitely require that. It'd be no question. As far as like tree species, they base their list off of what's allowed in the ordinance. So if we need to revisit the tree species list, I think that's okay too. You know, not opposed to that. And the tree species list is not in the ordinance as well, so we do have the opportunity to revisit that at any time. So if there's specific recommendations on that, let me know. And the DPW director can review that too. So that's what's nice about that not being in the ordinance, but, that was just the recommendation. And then, units being totally upstairs versus downstairs. I like the, you know, Asian place idea too. We can't require that at this stage, but, and I don't know that you were asserting that, but just putting that out there for the record, and just clear direction going forward. But, I think those are the only clarifications. I think Chair Baker mentioned the tree study earlier, at least on our call, that the city did. And so any trees that, you know, are not able to fit on this site, the developer does pay into the tree fund. And then I was checking the area out on what areas are of need. And so we try to plant in the neighborhood, and turns out this neighborhood needs a whole lot of trees. So the trees that would be paid into for the tree fund, though they may not be on this site, they would be either on Woodward Heights, Grayson, Goodrich, those areas as well.
Oh, that's great to hear that Aaron's got the study done for this neighborhood.
Yep, so there's,
'Cause I think that was Mike's intent too, was kind of stay.
Yep,
yeah,
exactly.
okay.
So the tree study has, you know, low to high priority needs. And so this is in the yellow, which I think is the middle of the road need. But, but some of the industrial district is some of the higher need too. So it could go, you know, within a few blocks, I think is what we would recommend.
Thank you.
Clarification to the chair. On that, the tree fund, is that an operation that the developer can just choose to pay into, or do we have to permit it in approval as a condition? I mean, it's listed as a condition, and I see it there a lot, but I don't think I mean, they can just choose to get rid of the trees and pay into the fund, right? Or does it have to be approved through us?
It does have to be approved through staff or the planning commission, just depending on the level of approval. So in this instance, it would have to be a condition.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've tried to word it, I know it's new, but I've been trying to word it going forward as a way that allows for flexibility if all of a sudden they get to the end of the road and they can fit one of those trees, or they can protect one last tree, then it's flexible enough for that.
Okay.
But it's all flagged in our building application, so that when our building official goes out for the final C of O, if it still says has not paid in the tree fund, then that's like the trigger, like, pay now so you can get your C of O. But,
Okay.
yeah.
Commissioner Burke?
Yeah, I just wanted a point of clarification on the comment as far as a plane. I'm not interpreting that necessarily as a building literally has to be ending at 150 feet. I just think, looking at this and the differentiation between, you know, those frontages, it seems like something a little bit more substantive. That's kind of where I was trying to get at with that. That being said, I also want to respect past decisions as well as the interpretation here from the city staff.
So we as a developer, we have an idea, an option, as it appears that having an entrance on the south side is critical to this, and Mike really wants to get this thing going. So our opinion, basically our thought is, if you see, and I'm gonna walk up to the,
I can keep talking if I need to stay here and talk at the microphone. I can talk for a long time.
so we would eliminate this unit, and we would create an entrance here, which would duplicate this entrance here. We would step this building back. If you go to the elevation, Mike, we can actually create two separate buildings visually that would create a lower roof between these two big roofs, similar to what it's doing here, just not as wide. but it would do the same, it would accomplish, in our opinion, the same scenario as what you see here on the south side.
So you're talking about some mirroring, not exact,
Mirroring
but,
image of that, not as wide as this, I'd probably take this and I'd flip it, so I'd put the entrance here, move this over here, so that these ran straight through. And so you'd have an entrance with a sidewalk up to an entrance here that would run straight through, all this stuff would just shift over.
I think that, I can only speak for me, I think that would address my concern about the building not addressing the street. Whether it addresses the other architectural questions, I'm not sure, but the,
Well, if you go to
but the,
elevation, if you go to the north elevation,
Yep.
you know, where you see these two roofs stopping.
Yep.
That same concept would occur, it would just be that wide versus that wide.
got it.
Down right there. So
Got it.
you would see this roof low, you'd see this coming back up, you'd see this stopping like this does, and you would see this picking back up here and creating a block that way.
So I'm just going to restate, both for my understanding and for the record, that we're talking about potentially mirroring the north entrance on the south entrance, a slightly different configuration, but the same idea,
Yes.
so that you would have a connection to the sidewalk, you would have an entrance for residents,
And a canopy.
and how would this then interact with the conversation earlier about patios and whether patios connect to the sidewalk, or is this sort of a, now patios are maybe more private
Maybe the
space?
patios are just patios then.
Yeah.
Patios are not
That-
entrances,
that's-
because now people coming from urban rest can go in and they can come in and go in this entrance and then get to the corridor to get to their unit.
Unit
I mean,
number-
after what
unit
we've seen
number
at
13.
Livernois, it's
Okay.
constant. I mean, again, people are
No, I
coming up to
I
those
understood,
windows all the
that's,
time.
what I don't want to do is
I've stood there
have,
and watched people literally just walk up to the windows. It's
I believe you,
unbelievable, so.
because they're really cool.
Yeah.
What I don't want to do is have a condition in a motion that has anything to do with patios if we've just offered a different one.
Right.
So that was,
Right.
that was my question. So we're talking about unit number 13, if we're seeing this
Correct.
correctly, okay, for the record. What? Questions, comments, thoughts from the commission? Does this make it more likely for us to, if we create a pretty specific condition, vote on this evening? Or is there still a sense that we want to see something come back?
I'd support it this evening with a pretty specific condition. Don't ask me to write it, but, yeah.
Any other thoughts from the table? Just informally?
Excuse me, through the chair, I appreciate the quick thinking and the design adaptation. I would like to see it presented that way instead of a condition. I also would ask again that we have some more visual variation in there. I understand that it's facing an industrial area, but that could really take off and be super cool, and I'd hate for this to look old and dated against what might be happening in that case. And so it's trying to relate to an area, and it's not relating to the residential as well. So I guess I'm asking for some middle ground where try and put some more visual variation in it, work with it a little bit more. I'm great with industrial materials and use of them, but I think it's lacking in detail. So great use industrial detail, but I'd like to see the visual variety brought forward with your proposed front entrance along the length of the building.
I'd support that as well, with clear direction to the applicant that I don't want to put words in your mouth, but my understanding that the question about length of building and variation could be addressed through some changes to the south facade, but you would prefer to see it rather than put it in a condition?
Yes.
Okay. But you're not suggesting that a building needs to be separated, or how much variation are you saying? I guess the question is, how much, are you saying that you'd want to see separate buildings, or are you saying that there's a way to keep them connected, but there needs to be more
I'm not so
work
much
done?
talking about the separation, I'm talking about what's left over is the long blank walls
Got it.
between the nice new entrance. That's why I'm looking for variety that meets the character of the north side of the street.
Thank
And
you.
I'm not talking traditional, I'm just talking about more interest, more visual interest than a blank wall.
Thank you.
Through the chair. I was looking for dimensions for the parking lot. I don't know if I just missed it. Is that in the packet? I know it says 20 spaces, but one of the key things that we gotta kind of understand in approving the site is the circulation of it. You've got some spaces that are horizontal to other spaces backing up, which always scares me. Just I think this side of my car getting dinged up, but.
From those spaces,
It's here on the Sybil, I think.
24 feet here
from the back of those spaces to the other,
to the
parking
parallels,
spaces.
and then if you go this way, we have 24 feet, which is exactly what 2 drive aisles require. Actually, this is better. This is 26.7 feet between here and here. So
Okay.
that's even better than what's required.
I didn't look that deeply into it because Justin said it met the,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it meets it, then that's great. I just couldn't see it, and maybe it's because I couldn't read the small numbers, but that's great. That's one of the concerns I had. For the entranceway, if you're gonna mirror it, maybe there's a way that you can make it look like, the buildings are separate by having that one.
Well, the roof will be substantially lower than both
Yeah,
of
the
those other roofs.
planes-
If you look at that north elevation, there is a 10-foot difference between the height of the 26-foot high and the lower canopy that runs straight through. So the canopy is running straight through the building is gonna continue through the building that you see in the,
can you be up, please? Thank you.
thought I was talking loud enough.
Thank you.
If you look at the canopy on the south side, and then you look at the roof parapet above that canopy, imagine that line going all the way through the building. It is going to appear like 2 buildings. It clearly is. And I understand the premise of what everybody's talking about in the south elevation. I get it. As the architect, I was trying to separate the buildings by still marrying the buildings together. By looking at that north elevation, that, in my opinion, looks like 2 buildings.
Yes.
Even
I
though it's
agree with that
not.
statement.
It looks like 2 buildings. Imagine that same concept on the south side, that number 13 unit, stepping completely down and running through at, I think it's 12 feet high. The building overall is 26 feet high. There is a substantial difference between one height of roof and where this canopy is running through.
Is it easy enough to cross off south elevation and just put north comma south elevation on the north elevation?
I don't know if your architect would agree to that, but that might be a little more than he was just offering. So I've got some notes as we've been talking about, conditions, we've been talking about south facade in the broad category of sort of length of building and articulation. We've talked about materials, we've talked about cedar in particular, and we've also talked about height, with a roofline height change, but then also broadly, more visual variation to the south side. And I think it was that broad line, that's possibly something we would need to see if others felt that there needed to be more visual variation other than the Unit 13 conversation that just happened. We also talked about addressing Woodward Heights with a south entrance. Those are related. If someone wants to make a motion that makes them the same condition, that's fine. I guess now I'm not seeing a ton more conversation, and if there are other questions or a motion, I guess that's the next thing I'd be looking for. And if there's no one willing to make a motion and this is sitting on the table, is that the intent, or is just no one wanting to try to make a motion?
I think it's some of that, but I'm not certain there's consensus to pass this yet, even though
Well, we don't need consensus, we need a majority.
Yeah, right.
But,
You know what I mean, though. I mean, I respect the opinion of
I'm
my
just, yeah,
colleagues.
absolutely. I'm just trying to see if someone wants to put something out there to be amended or voted on, or if we're sort of deciding not to take action.
I mean, if it comes down to whether the conditions will be met or not, I think I have a pretty good track record to doing exactly what we said we were gonna do last time, so I just wanna at least point that out.
Sure.
I just can't make motions, so
I know.
ask my colleagues what the intent of the silence is. Is it that,
Can I look at your?
yep. I mean, they're related, I had just written them down separately.
Through the chair. Do you not want to come back with a revised plan? I think there was some.
This project's not gonna go forward.
Some interest in that, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, if we have to come back, we're probably just not gonna move this project forward. We're gonna table it and sell the land and move on, because time is of the essence. I mean, that's,
2 weeks is gonna make you sell the land.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you guys, we've been fighting at this.
Well, then, I guess
2
that
weeks.
asks other
Is it really
questions.
2 weeks? Hold on a second, though, 2
Yeah.
weeks. Now, that's,
It's November 4th.
I could be
Weeks.
back on,
We
so I
meet
wouldn't
every-
have to resubmit 3 weeks prior and all
No,
that.
We meet
Well,
every
that's
2
a
weeks.
different stance, because now my interpretation of this was I was gonna have to go all the way back through
no,
again as
no,
I
no,
did
no. Let's
after.
make sure we're
Okay.
clear what we're asking you to do.
That-
I'm
that-
not-
Yeah,
Are you comfortable with that, Justin? That they submit an update and,
I mean, we're not gonna have this over
Come back for
tomorrow, though,
November?
like, it's gonna take probably, you know what I mean? I just, that,
We gotta publish it, correct me if I'm wrong, like
Right.
Wednesday or Thursday before the,
if, yeah, that's a whole different
Is it-
understanding
it's
of what I
November
just had an
7th, isn't it?
interpretation of coming
I'm really
back,
glad
so.
we asked this question.
yeah, me
Yes.
too.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, that should have been the ugly end of the meeting.
If I can get
I
the
don't think
plan
anyone's trying to
back,
have an ugly end of the meeting.
No,
No, yeah, November, I mean, I don't wanna come back, let's put it that way, no. I
no,
don't.
no, kinda understand, but I think.
I'm hearing enough of my colleagues say that they want to see it, that I think that's the conversation we're having.
I
And
mean,
really for you, I mean, if they don't, if people want to see changes, then they're gonna, it seems like decline to vote for it, so I mean.
Oh, no, that's why, there's very different understanding of 2 weeks and how long it's taken to get to this point today, so.
if I receive all the changes by October 27th, that seems pretty reasonable to get this back on the agenda, as long as, I think we should probably meet before that to make sure that, the visual variation, the potential changing of Unit 13, all of that is, incorporated, so we can come back with fewer conditions. I think that is fine. I mean, that will meet my timing requirements.
Yeah, would we also be given a list of conditions or a list of, comments based on? okay.
Yeah, can you be a little bit more specific on the date of the next meeting? I think
Calendar again, please.
the 14th?
It's not the fourth?
All right, sorry, excuse me, not November 4th, November 7th,
7th,
November
okay.
7th.
yes.
Didn't
So
know
we're
if those
meeting,
were-
the next two
those
meetings are
weren't
the
combined.
7th and the 14th.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
7th, okay.
Yes, sorry.
So then when would
Which
you,
is 3 weeks,
when
but-
would you need their paperwork back then?
The.
7 and 14,
Still the.
21, right?
Sorry, 29th.
29th.
I don't necessarily know how this works, but a good point was just raised. I mean, would there be an issue with approving this based on the condition that we come back on the 4th, showing those changes, allowing us to start moving forward?
We've never
Would
done
be
that
the 7th.
before.
What's that?
We've never done that before, I'm not sure.
Oh, I get what he's saying.
I
And
do too.
approval.
I was gonna try to
Subject
figure out if
to-
that was,
A conditional approval,
that's how I was gonna try it.
we haven't done that before. I can see the benefits on Mike's end.
My fear would be, I mean, they come back and then we still don't like, or there isn't consensus to vote in the
It's-
changes.
His risk to take, though, if he's comfortable with it.
Yeah, true.
Are you comfortable with that risk if we would pass it conditionally on you getting approval on the 7th?
Wait,
Yeah, I thought that's what you were
My head
asking
was-
me.
I don't
Say
think
What's
again?
that?
that's what he's asking.
Oh, I thought that's what you were asking for, I'm sorry.
No, I just kind of talked to, that doesn't really make a difference, I guess, if we get approval tonight based on conditions or come back with it's the
I think
same.
it's 6 of one, half dozen of the
Yeah,
other.
we were just talking, so we can try to get some
Okay.
mobilization
I
going.
get what
Thanks,
you're
Melvin.
saying, yep. He wants to try and get his site work done before the ground freezes.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
And also kind of want to make sure the city's on board one more time before we demo that building and lose any opportunity to put another restaurant in there.
Understood.
Yeah.
Justin, in order for you to be sort of clear and comfortable, I mean, I think we've talked about the the key issues, concerns, requests, it's a little bit unconventional. I think the last time we did it was for the PUD at Taft. But would you want to have a conversation with a planning commissioner or two to give feedback? I mean, we can't deliberate
Right.
outside of public, but what gives you sort of a clearer
If, the-
sense or more confidence or?
yeah, I mean, yeah, if there's one member that can be the, look at a concept and say, generally, I think this meets what's happening, I mean, that's not a guarantee by any means.
Understood.
For sure, but, I think that would make me comfortable too, to have, that backup feedback. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
we have two other planners on staff that would look at it too, so, yeah.
I
But so
think that's a
between-
reasonable and responsible step to take, to have one or two of us look at it.
The last time we did it, it was because we'd gone through something a few times and we just kind of weren't getting there.
Yeah.
And I think it was Commissioner Williamson and me.
Yeah, and I thought it
was
helped.
that
Hugely
last
helpful.
time. Oh, and Councilman Martin.
Yeah, very helpful.
I don't know if there's a volunteer or two who have an interest.
I mean, I'd be happy to look at it again, but
I can nominate Josh. He's gonna move.
I'm trying to think creatively how we could get this through tonight. I mean, the two concerns that we're looking at is basically the breakup of the plane within 150 feet, right? And then a sort of more interesting facade along that plane, even after it's broken up. I mean, generally, that's what we're looking at. Is there anyone who feels that they can put that into words that we would all feel comfortable with as a condition? I mean, that's really what we're going to do, even if they come back.
I think I heard Commissioner Azar say she needs to see it. And I respect that.
I do
I do too.
Okay.
One of the two architects at the table. If Commissioner Casio said that, I'd,
Yeah.
feel the same way.
Well,
but-
because, through the chair, I think, saw some great thinking on your feet, but it might actually, they might have another idea while they're working on it,
Make it better.
and it could be that much better.
I might
And
be able to
and
figure out how
maybe
to keep
even
that
with
20th unit.
us describing the condition,
that would be helpful.
Yes.
and then coming back, it still could be that much better, but
Wow, you can't be nice.
I'd rather see it.
Well, we did figure out, I just did figure out a way to, if we eliminate that number 13 unit, which, by the way, one unit will not be 13 now, so it'll go from 12 to 14.
Right.
Like hotel.
So we skip 13
Like hotels,
altogether.
all right.
And
Given them
if
up.
you take those 4 units that overlook, on the south or overlook Woodward Heights, we'll be able to increase the size of each one of those units, and we'll get a first floor bedroom with a full bath
That's
on that
lovely.
first floor for those units
Wow.
to solve the elderly issue.
Yeah, and that's a nice premium too. Yeah, that's lovely. I can't make motions.
One more-
so,
yeah.
We need one to
Yes.
ask him to come back.
Josh was trying to get one.
Okay.
Sorry, okay.
No, I mean, I was just wondering if there was, but if it seems like the intent is that we want to actually see it again, then it would be up to
This is move once you move.
the developer to
Yeah.
withdraw it at this point. It wouldn't be up to us to make a motion.
Well, or you take no action. I don't think it needs to be withdrawn.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm looking at the city clerk. That's not how we've done it in the past. You don't need to vote on it. You don't even need to vote up or down. You certainly don't need to withdraw. They're just, but, changing something that's 20 feet across. I'm sorry.
Huh?
You vote on it, it's denied, fails, he has to wait, correct?
Right, in the past, we've just taken no action.
Okay.
So that it doesn't restart his approval time clock.
Right.
Right, that's not our intent.
Right.
No motion.
Sounds like no motion, so if I can just summarize, it sounds like, potentially turning the 13th unit into a front entry would help with that building plane issue. There needs to be some sort of visual variation on front. I think your ideas that you came up with better the ones than I suggested, so great. And then myself, I can clarify the landscape notes and make sure that the right tree counts are in the staff report. It seems like the plane issue and the visual variation out front were the two primary concerns.
And I think that will really solve my biggest questions, which had to do with the length of the building.
Yep.
So, yeah. Okay.
Is that clear to you guys?
And, I'm sorry, Councilman Martin raised his hand, and Commissioner Brazen and Commissioner Azar, or one or the other? Or both?
We'll do three.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got volunteers, again, based on, finding a meeting time, that'll work, whether you guys do it in person or via phone, I'll leave that up to Justin. But you've got 3 volunteers who could be helpful just to make sure this keeps moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay. We will move to item number 6, administrative items.
Nothing major, just wanted to kind of run through the next few meetings. The couple of things on the horizon, so the applicants that previously had talked about rezoning McDowell, they're gonna come back with a conditional rezoning specific to their sites rather than rezone the entire block. They heard a lot of the good feedback, and Chair Baker, I don't know if you had already talked to them.
No, I haven't talked to Mark. Did
So,
you?
no, I'm gonna
Oh.
follow up with him and make sure he's, has all the right marching orders, but he seemed to, understand where everyone's comments were headed and appreciated it, and I told him that I think the planning commission was pretty happy that, he was prepared and had, like, some good examples, although they were all Detroit, that's not necessarily Ferndale, but,
We don't have a lot of it here yet.
yeah, right.
So.
So that should be coming probably closer to December, I would guess. There is an applicant who potentially, I don't have the zoning map up unfortunately, but there is a few parcels here that are adjacent to the railroad tracks on East 9 Mile. They're currently zoned M1 industrial, and they are potentially going to request rezoning to C2. I think right now it's community, what is the name of that business?
It's Community Living Services.
Right.
Yep.
And so there's some other, I think the building owner's looking at, other potential options, and in the future land use map, it does call for commercial there, so it would extend the C2 zoning there potentially. I'll believe it when I see a full application, but wanted to give you a heads up on that. That might be a November meeting. And then, so November 7th is when we'll meet next. That will be probably this project that just came back. And then we are targeting either November 7th or the following week, the 14th, for a big discussion about exactly what we talked about tonight. Mixed-use zoning, what are the uses we want. I kind of gave a preview, I think, to most of you last month or the month before. And so I think we've really nailed down something that kind of will help with the building with discussion, will help with, I think we do have to make some decisions on if we really do want to require active uses on the ground level, or if we want to slow walk our way there. But we've got some frontage types proposed that are similar to what, different scale obviously than downtown, but will kind of guide some development into more of what we've been talking about and that we want to see on Hilton and Livernois and this area. And we're also putting together sort of a residential development guidebook that will go with the ordinance. And I think that will help nudge some developers in some more creative ways to get some of that missing middle housing, to get some of that age-in-place housing that we've been talking about, because we know it's in demand, and I can't wait to see the results of that survey,
It's
because
so fun. It really is.
we just don't hear enough from that side of the city related to housing. So I'm pretty excited for the next few meetings. We've also, still plugging away on those ordinances we've been talking about, but we're trying to prioritize all of those right now. And but I think we have a good run to end the year with some big changes that'll set us up for 2019.
Do you anticipate Hayes Lemmers and/or Drayton coming in November?
Um,
We talked about potentially Drayton before Thanksgiving.
Right. I have not heard much from the Drayton team, to
Okay.
be honest, so no news on that.
I'm sorry, through the chair, can you speak to who the Drayton team is right now?
I can't. I mean, as far as what I've been discussed, or the last communication I received was from the design house team.
Okay.
And so I haven't received a new PA, so we're just working off what we have.
All right, thanks.
But
Oh, is
I've
there-
received no indication that, I've not seen, received any new plans or anything like that, so.
Is there a reason to believe there's a new owner?
Just rumor.
My agent
Okay.
reached out to Kevin, which is the church's agent, and there's a new PA, which expires November 21st
Okay.
with a different party.
They've got a lot of work to do then.
That's-
Yeah, they got a
I
lot of
know.
work to do then. Okay.
So, yeah, until I receive a PA, I feel like I can't,
Yeah.
offer
at-
much more than what
So
I've
at this
got.
point, it's probably not likely that we're gonna see something on November 14, which is where we kind of thought we might.
Right, that was the previous kind of timeline that the group was working off of,
Okay,
so.
got it?
But
Okay.
thanks for the news.
Councilman, Commissioner? Got it?
And then Hayes Lemmers, we did receive plans today. I would say that we've been operating off of, for PUDs, a 4-week lead time. So it really depends on the state of those plans, because they literally just came in today. So if they are, if we feel like they're good and they want to move forward and there's not a lot of revisions, then we'll bring it probably to that, I don't know. I actually don't even know if that second meeting's realistic, to be honest, but.
And there was a neighborhood meeting related to Hayes
Yes.
Lemmers. And did you get a sense that, that there was any sort of common ground that was found? Or, I know that you weren't there, just Jordan was there, but.
Sure. Yeah, the summary I received, so Aaron and Jordan both led or participated in a meeting with the neighborhood group for the Hayes Lemmers project. Sounds like it went pretty well. The format that the city team presented as is, here is, what our role is, which I think is, good, and we shouldn't assume everyone knows what everyone at the city does. I certainly didn't before I started working here, so I think it was a good and level setting, and here's what we can affect, here's what the planning commission looks at, here's what staff looks at, here's what city council would look at. It sounded like a lot of questions were related to the brownfield plan, which is 100% valid, and there was some explaining of why we review site plans before brownfield plans, just based on past history. So I think people understood that. My sense from our team was that the meeting was well-received, and the tenor was much different than I think what was here. I think there's definitely some folks from that group that are, they'd rather nothing happen there at all. And I think the explanation was, realistically, there's some things that could happen there because it is private property. Erin will be at the next meeting. She probably can provide more detail on that, but
Thank you.
it sounded like it went pretty well. I think, I think we're continually as staff evolving our communication methods, and hopefully it is, I think with more projects, I think we've improved, and so, I think it's gonna change and evolve probably, for each project and as we go and as communication methods change, but I think, we're making strides.
Thank you. Well, we found one to reach seniors, holy cow.
Right?
It was, how interesting, there are, according to SEMCOG, there's approximately 1,700 people, 60 and above, or 65 and above, in Ferndale. My understanding is about 1,500 surveys went out based on the the absentee voter data that we have, so we pretty much hit I wasn't me, but pretty much every senior in Ferndale received a survey, and 500 of them
How about that for a response
came back
rate?
in. That's
just
humongous,
tremendous.
right? So like direct mail clearly hits that population, and that's very expensive. I understand that, but, for transparency purposes, we put a lot online, and I love that, and I think that we're a leader in that. But that direct to your mail, there's a big segment of our population that still reads what comes to their mailbox.
Yeah.
And that was really reinforced when I heard that there was a 30% response rate
It's awesome.
to that,
I think
to that survey.
the other thing that we've seen a good result with, which I would not have expected, is door hangers.
Sure.
We've been trying to do that paired with letters, and then also everything online, and of course, everything online we do have here, as well, and we've been putting at stuff at the library too, and maybe we, put more things there, but yeah, I think we have a changing community, so it's gonna take multiple
Yeah.
communication methods, but, I'm glad to hear that survey just received that response rate. We need some of that, from some of our surveys, but.
Yeah, I can't wait to have this data done. I think the other comment that we've heard about communication is, more lead time would be better. And the cities that I work with where you get more lead time is because they have a backlog.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I know I'm gonna be on the BZA agenda in like 2 months because it's gonna take 2 months for them to get through. Are we creating our own issue by meeting more often, or are we being more, it's a kind of a meta question. Are we doing any sort of, communications disservice by meeting more frequently to move things through the process so we don't have a backlog? It's just sort of like a meta. I don't know the answer, but I started thinking about it when I got a BZA date in Detroit and went, anything else on your end?
I don't think so.
I
Well-
definitely want to thank Commissioners Rock, Brazen, and Czar for entering surveys, and Baker, because it's actually really fun.
Yeah.
Commissioner Rock got someone who wanted to build a tiny house community.
Oh,
Elderly,
seniors?
tiny house subdivision.
nice.
You laugh, but we
I know.
just
I
had a
think
very
it's awesome.
prominent senior citizen resident move to a state to a tiny house
I know.
community.
I know she did. I have gotten a lot of people who, I've had more people interested in buying than renting, which was interesting. So people, at least in my sort of piles, have been more interested in buying a condo than renting an apartment in that age bracket, which I guess isn't surprising, but it was just, we're building a lot of rental, and I think that's market-driven in terms of financing, but perhaps our local market is saying we want more purchase options, and I don't know if that then helps influence financing, but.
I have a stack of, I want to live in a house, and if I move, I'm not staying here.
Oh, interesting. That's really different than mine. Are you finding any interesting trends or like
There's
fun
a little-
answers?
Well, so it's interesting to see where they eat. Like, I'll see which restaurants, and I go back and go, how old were they,
Yes.
Because they're cool places, so, I have one that I want to give back to you because I don't know if it's.
Question about it?
It's just worth reading. I'll talk to you.
Okay.
But it's nothing bad. But yeah, great input.
There are, I have some in the car, if anyone else wants to do some data entry. It's just a Survey Monkey thing that you kind of click through, and it took me a couple hours to do 50 over a couple days, so I'm not gonna lie, but it was really interesting, and at least in my opinion, a solid third of that survey relates directly to master planning, whether it's about transportation or land use or sort of the desirability and safety of your community and your parks. It's just really,
When
Side
do you
note.
need them done by?
Safe.
what was that?
There's a big feeling of safety, a real sense of that. I
I
only
concur
came
with
across a
that.
couple that were neutral or otherwise.
Side note, I think that the duplicate of question 33, they
Yes.
took that as like a mental test of their ability. Like, some of them wrote out like, this is a duplicate, as if we were, or as if, the survey was questioning them.
When do you
You
need
were
them back by? If you took some.
I think I put a deadline for us by the end of this week. I think Kat and Jeannie's deadline really is by the end of next week.
I'll take a stack if I can get them by the end of next week, but
Yeah.
don't tell Jeannie, because I told her no. So,
They're in my car. It's worthwhile to hear from, in very specific ways, a group that I probably don't interact with enough. So.
yeah, I'll take some.
And the number of people who say that their housing option is to move in with their children, it always makes me think, do your children know that? It's like if my mother checked that box, I'd be like, So, but really, thank you. I think this will be beneficial for us, but also for conversations like we had tonight, where developers are going like, what do you need? We want to build you what you need. What does your market want?
Very stable tenant, too.
Very stable.
If I may, one more item.
Or owner. Please.
Ferndale Public Schools is holding an open house on their 2020 bond.
Yeah.
It's going to be very large, and it would be of the amount that would look like new facilities. So that raises the question of old facilities on land. Is it appropriate or sized right to put new facilities there, or what are they looking at? So I'm very interested to see what they're interested in, but I think it'd be worth seeing because we were somewhat not asked to be involved in the last round, and I think it made some monumental shifts in our land use. And I'd like to just be part of the conversation on that one, so.
If I
It's
can,
next Monday at 6 o'clock.
yeah, if I
at
can
the high
opine
school.
on that, I appreciate you going because,
Council's all gonna be here.
council's all gonna be here, we're tied up, and other than some conversation with the city manager, my belief in talking to my colleagues is we have not been involved really on this yet, so it's another similar round, so I really appreciate that you or anybody else who can go. We expressed our concern to the superintendent that it wasn't a night we couldn't go, and we're gonna have a follow-up session with her, she was responsive, so.
That's great.
I have two more, whatever.
Go for it.
First, just on behalf of city council and the city, if this is really his last meeting, I just want to thank my colleague for all his work again. Thank you. I really appreciate everything you've done, and you served us well here, so you're gonna be missed, so.
And you didn't get to finish the camper ordinance. Send it to you.
Right.
Secondly, I've requested the city clerk lead an effort, which he's done with staff. The last planning commission we had was canceled, and I've been approached by residents who showed up to that. So our communication strategy around cancellation of meetings, I think could stand a revisit. We do tend to rely heavily on electronic means, and other than the billboard out front, we need to just find a way that we cover that. The last planning commission.
Oh, gosh. Our special, yes.
Yeah, so, again, nothing, I just want to, it's an awareness issue. The clerk's taken that up, and I think it's not, we were just the symptom, but it's a citywide, I think, opportunity of how we communicate cancellation of meetings across the board, you know, so, she's looking at that and has already suggested some, amendments to that, so I just want to make you guys aware.
Thank you. Any other commission
Yeah.
items? Any other city items? Anything else you need from us, Rich?
I'm good.
You're good? All right, we will adjourn. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Need like a presidential text alert.
Another one?
Graduate.
Yeah, I know, right? No planning commission.
Everybody's like, no, next time there'll be like 1,000 people here.
Right? Yeah.
I just want to say to everybody, I really enjoy doing this, but I'm really new to all the, like, the protocol. So if I'm missing anything, maybe if we have a full house, don't yell at me, but like, I'm really open to feedback.
And I wrote down all